Let's go back to the bolts. Now, we have them. That's an MS 2142-8.
Welcome back. Before jumping into the rudder, I got my torque wrenches needed to torque the lower rudder attachment bracket on the vertical stabilizer. So I've pulled that back out and I'm looking up the torque tables. And as you can see from my confusion, the fastener is not actually on the chart listed in section 5. So here I'm looking up online the reference that Vans makes in section 5 to where they're pulling the torque data from, which is the FAA's Advisory Circular 43.13-1B, which has all of the fastener types and their torque values. So with that information, I can actually start torquing the bolts. And I guess that's not even accurate. It is a screw fastener with a metal self-retaining locking nut. And the first step is to get the nut fully engaged. And I'm using a regular socket wrench. Here I am torquing the first nuts to spec. I did previously run the beam wrench on it, so I did know the running torque. And in the next step here, I'll be putting the rudder stop attachments in, and there I'll show using the beam wrench, as I'm getting it here, to get the running torque on the fastener so that I can add that to my desired final torque setting. So there I got my running torque, and I add that to my desired final torque and set that into the wrench and tighten everything down to spec. And with that, the vertical stabilizer is done. On to finishing the rudder. Here we go with dimpling, at least on the trailing edges and most of the dimples on the skin. It can be done with the squeezer. Here's the platform I made for the C-arm. And for some reason my dad did not want to wear hearing protection. It is rather loud. Not like riveting, but it still is uncomfortable to listen to repeatedly. The rudder skins being flat are much easier to work with than the vertical stabilizer. And here the bottom portion of the C-frame came loose, and I noticed the nipple dies weren't lining up perfectly anymore. So I retightened it and went back on my way. I've gotten the trailing edge countersunk, and all of the parts have been primed, and I'm going to start actually assembling the rudder. You can see here I'm working on getting the rudder horn attached to the lower rib. Next up is getting the rudder attachment point doublers in place. These will have nut plates attached to them. The rivets called out in that section were probably a little too long, and my squeezer had a hard time hitting the power band in it and getting it squeezed on the first attempt. So I had to squeeze everything slightly once, readjust it, and squeeze it to its final dimension with a second squeeze. And now I'm getting the nut plates attached. And here I'm getting set up to do some back riveting. This is probably the only process that's actually faster than squeezing rivets, is setting up a line, getting the backing plate in place, one of the keys and the main paranoias in doing back riveting is making sure that the rivet you're about to hit is actually supported by the backing plate. there is special 3M back riveting tape that will hold the rivets in place but doesn't leave an adhesive stickiness to the project when you're done. I haven't had any problems using regular painter's tape. Getting down to the very tip of the ribs, the squeezer can't fit in, and there's no way to hit it with the rivet gun, so you have to use a double backing plate technique where I use the back rivet plate and then I have a small tungsten piece that I rest on top of the rivet and then indirectly drive the rivet with the small tungsten piece and the rivet gun. Last thing is to get the shear clips in place on the right side of the rudder here, and then I'll be ready for Pro Seal. I've ordered the Flame Master tank sealant directly from Vans, even though I keep calling it Pro Seal. It's actually not that brand name. Right. Time for Pro Seal. Get the trailing edge done. So here I am mixing up the Semco cartridge of the Flame Master tank sealant, not Pro Seal. And it's a two-part chemical where the activator is shipped in the plunger, and once you start mixing it, they mix together. I tried a couple different techniques and found that the Semco cartridge fits in a regular caulking gun. And here I am thinning out the bead that I had placed, and I don't think I thinned it out as much as I could have. It really needs to be a film at most. I ended up having to squeeze out quite a bit from the trailing edge to allow the skins to actually come together. It's not the best camera angle, but you work in sections where you get the stiffeners and shear clips all pull riveted together, and then cleco that section of the tailing edge down and just work from stiffener to stiffener until they're all riveted and the trailing edge is secured. Now there's a lot of cleaning all of the squeezed out Pro Seal. I'm gonna go get the spar, click everything in place of where the final position is gonna be. And the last thing to do is set solid edges down and place some weights to hold the trailing edge together while it is clecoed and while the tank sealant is setting. So I'm going to leave it here. I'll catch you on the next video.